Hallo en welkom terug by Ruh-Moer, die podcast vir vars vrae in jou moedertaal. Today's guest has spent a good chunk of time exploring what makes us tick as people, why we behave the way we do, why we see ourselves the ways we do, and how this all fits together. Now, there are plenty of books and workshops and courses that promise you to help find yourself and find out who you are. But Elnieke swears by this particular approach. She says it's been the most effective way for her, or things she's tried in her search of figuring out who she really is. So we thought, let's sit down for proper conversation about all of this and about identity and self-awareness and the strange but fascinating business of getting to know yourself. Today's guest, he goes by Andrew Meyer. We won't say too much up front. We'd rather let the conversation speak for itself. So I'll hand over to Elnieke for our initial question.
Hi, Andrew. My first question, my very, very first question would be, who are you?
Well, most people just know me by my name, but asking who I am, well, if I told you, it'll give it away. But yeah, I'm just a regular person living the life that everyone else lives. I just live it very differently.
How do you live it differently?
If you've ever watched the movie The Matrix, it's kind of like being a bit unplugged from the Matrix. So very, very simply put, I mean, if we are when we are brought up, when we're growing up, we get into this idea that we need to have an education, we need to go get a job and make some money, and we get ushered into being a worker. So we become a worker, we go and, we want to buy a house, we want to buy a car, we want to buy all these things, and we become consumers. So we get plugged into a very big machine. And one of the big things about the big machine is that they don't want you to be a thinker. They'll tell you that they want you to be a thinker until you start becoming a thinker. And then things will change a lot. And then when I say we unplug ourselves, or when we get unplugged, when you become a thinker, and when I talk about being a thinker, we're all thinking, we do all think. But when we think about our actions and we know what drives us, things change. So we're no longer on automatic. So I'll give you a simple example. When I get onto Takealot, or I get onto Amazon, or I want to do some online shopping, I start clicking, and all I want to do is hit the buy button. I just want to buy a whole lot of stuff and just swipe the credit card until it melts. You want to do all those kinds of things, and you want to get a whole lot of stuff. And then when I pause and I go, do I actually want this? Do I really need it? And most of the time, the answer is no. Can I buy it? Of course I can. But then, becoming a different kind of consumer, where you consume different kind of information, you consume different products, you use different things. So as opposed to being drawn around by, as a simple example, buying the new set of high heels is going to boost my ego or boost my self-esteem, or buy the next BMW, or buy the next, my favorite is a Lamborghini. I've been driving the same car for 20 years. And the only reason why I haven't, well, actually, no, the car's 20 years old, but I haven't been driving it for 20 years. But I could buy myself a brand new car, but I barely drive. I barely go out. I barely drive around. So what's the point of buying a new one? I'll have a nice flashy car in my driveway, but it doesn't mean much. So the meaning behind these things change. And that's what changed a lot inside of me, as opposed to chasing this big idea that, people judge you by the car you drive, or the house you live in, or the clothes you wear. And why don't you just judge me by my bank account? Or, we get judged by a whole lot of different things. And when you can let go of all of those other things outside of you, and here's the big thing for me is it starts sounding like I'm not a fan of money. I'm a big fan of money. Go out there, get rich, be as rich as you want, buy as many Lamborghinis as you like. But the difference is, are you buying the Lamborghini so that you can look cool to your friends? You're trying to impress people that you don't even know. Or are you just buying it because it's something you want? So another example is I went to the McLaren showroom the one day with a friend of mine, and all the cars that I liked is just the ones that I like because they look nice. But he wants to buy the biggest, the most expensive, and the one with the the fastest one, just because that's one gives them the most status. So he's very driven in that world. He doesn't really think about why he's buying it. He just thinks because other people will think that he's cool. So yeah, those are the things that have, when it comes down to who I am, when I say I'm actually just a generally simple person. And in the beginning, I'm relatively relaxed. But the more you get to know me, I'm either very easy to be around or I'll become very awkward to be around. Because when people ask me questions, the thing is, do you want an answer to the question or do you want a perspective or an idea? And most of the time, you just got to leave people with their perspective because it's uncomfortable to explore a perspective. It's only when you get brave enough to take a look at it that things change.
I must be honest, I did set up that question intentionally.
Yeah.
I'm sure you know that, but anyway. So
well, let me cut in here for a quick second for the audience. Here's a way to look at it, and the reason why I didn't give the direct answer that you and I know about is when I said it'll give the game away. Think about it like this for yourself. Can you answer who you are in less than 5 words, and don't connect it to anything that you do or anything that you have? If you can answer that question, then you're a lot closer than most people get to. And the idea to get to that answer, we both design and we discover who we are. We start life out with the design process, and when I say design process, I want to, let's say, I want to be a manager or a supervisor. I want to become a director. I want to be a CEO of a company. I want to, I want to be a mom. I want to be a dad. I want to be a wife, a husband. That's all designing who we are. And we start thinking that is who we are. And that's not who we are. That's what we design who we are. We start doing things. We do what people think we should be. Then the discovery process, when you actually discover who you are, you'll discover that it's actually very simple. And it's a lot easier to relax into that. But the discovery process is part of the process. And if you give away the secret or give away the movie, because it sounds so simple, the answer's missed completely. So and we discover who we are by going through difficult processes in our life. We do difficult things, even just let's say going to work or getting a new job or getting a promotion. These are all difficult things, and it's when we have difficult things in our life where we start to grow. And over time, we start discovering, what it is about us, who we are, how we fit in. And the big thing about knowing who you are, it's not about living up to somebody else's expectation. You actually just live up to your own expectations. And invariably, if you really get down to it, your own expectation needs to be higher than anybody else's expectation of you. The thing is, when we measure ourselves against someone else's expectation, we'll always fall short because they don't know what their expectations are. They can't tell you what their expectations are. All that they can tell you is that, you're not doing it right. You're not doing enough. You need to do more. And you go, okay, more of what? What exactly am I not doing? And what it turns out to be is they are trying to measure you by their standard. In other words, you need to do things according to me, according to my standard. When it's like, and that's one of the tricks about life itself, and that's part of the design process. So we're trying to make it with other people so that they can tell us that we are okay. When we do the deep work, we realize that we don't need their approval. We realize we are okay, and we can just be ourselves.
So I should mention Elnieke and Andrew knows each other, and I'm the wonderful and the very privileged position to be the third wheel here because I now get to discover this completely from scratch. So I feel like we straight up jumped into a very, very serious discussion here about getting to know yourself. And I just heard there for a second the question of life, and I'm like, wow, how did we get here? So take me 2 steps back, please.
Yeah.
What is it that you do? I know you say that what you do is part of the design that you do for yourself, and that I assume is some language, but in simple terms, I suppose that just means that's the part that you design about yourself. It's not necessarily who you really are.
No.
But so take us back for a second. Oh, I might even misunderstand that completely. But take us back for a second. What is it? How is it that you and Elnieke know each other? Because it's obviously through this process as well, I suppose. But yeah, how is it that what brought you to getting those questions up on the surface, and how did you start answering them?
Okay, so I'll give you the short story. A long time ago, when I was very young, back when the Earth actually started to cool, because I'm I'm not as youthful as I used to be. So when I was very young, I remember asking myself these different kinds of questions, and I remember, if I could say, waking up inside my own body and looking through my own eyes and looking at the world and thinking to myself, how do I see? Like, it's a weird question. And how do I feel? And I discovered that I'm inside this thing, but there's a difference between, like, let me ask you the question this way. You that is watching this, who's watching this? It's you. And there's a different you. So there's different layers of you. There's a you that's your body, and I can refer to you, or I can talk to the person that's you inside of you. And now I can ask the question is, what is it like for you in there? What is it like being inside of yourself? How do you feel inside of yourself? So we're living inside of ourselves. And I remember asking this question to myself when I was very young. I even thought to myself, like, what opens my eyes? Like, are there people inside my eyes when I wake up? They're like, turn these wheels that, like, my eyelids lift up and my arms move. And it was just like this crazy, weird idea. I was so fascinated by just being alive. It was just amazing. And yeah, and then I kind of parked that idea. I mean, it was just these little experiences that I had. And as I grew up, we get taught all different things. People tell us that this is the way that the world works, or, if you just be nice to people, they'll be nice back to you. Or if you give people gifts, they'll give gifts back to you. So we get told these little things. And yeah, so as I grew up, I thought, okay, fine, I'll just do what they told me to do. They told me to, go to school. If you get a good education, you'll get a good job. And if you get a good job, you'll meet someone nice. And if you meet someone nice, you'll be happy. That's good, simple stuff. Those are the promises that they give you. And then as I grew up, I realized that I did exactly the same thing. I went and I thought, well, I've got to get a good job. And yeah, school was an interesting thing. I can tell you more of my story if you really want to know. But I went through exactly the same life that most people live. And when I say, sometimes people say to me, oh, but you don't understand, Andrew. You just don't understand. I lived the life. I lived the life of not feeling good enough, feeling like a failure. I had learning disabilities at school. I'm very dyslexic. I can't spell. I can spell better now than I used to. I can spell, but I still don't spell well. And yeah, I used to struggle to write and all those things. And a B and a D always, it still gets me to this day. I struggled with those little things, and I used to follow everybody's advice, and they said, you just do these things, just study more, and you'll do better. And I studied really hard. And even when I got 100% on the tests, it didn't change much. And studying to get 100% on those tests was a lot of effort. And then it was only when I started engaging with myself and how I personally worked where things changed. So my dyslexia started to really slow down. I couldn't read in front of a room. Now I can read a book in front of people. I don't have to prepare, that kind of vibe. But it was only when I started to own my own life and go, okay, wait, listening to the advice that other people give me and tell me that this is how things are, because they say you do this, you'll get that. And when I was doing those things, I wasn't getting what was promised. They said, you'll get a good job, you'll be happy. And by the time I was 28, I wasn't unhappy. I was still doing fine. I had enough money in my bank account to take a year off. And I did. And eventually I took a year off. 1 year turned into 5 years. And eventually I was like, well, I basically retired because I didn't really go back to work. But that process, it was intense for me because I had to unlearn a whole lot of things which I'd been taught from when I was young. So I'm not sure if I'm on. Just ask me the question again, because I can give you every step that I went through. The biggest answer, or the main answer that I had, is every time I faced a challenge, the standard advice which was given to me and the standard advice which I followed, it was just enough just to keep me quiet, but it actually didn't solve the problem. And I became an engineer by trade. I thought to myself, if you want to make money, become an engineer, you'll make lots of money. So I thought that would be a good idea. And that's what I did. I followed the standard way of thinking: go to school, get a good job. I got a questionable education. Eventually, my education, when I learned the way that I learned, was as long as I could listen to someone and I could see them, I didn't have to write it down. It would go into my head. But the more I wrote things down and the more I was distracted, the less it would actually go in and it'd make my life a lot harder. But that's also not the standard way that we are taught at school. At school, it's you got to take notes, you got to highlight things, you got to do this, and you have to do it a particular way, but it's not tailored to you. And most of us are trying to, we're taking a round peg and we're trying to jam it into a square hole or whatever it is, and we're trying to fit into another way. So we haven't discovered our way, and that's part of the discovery process. And then, yeah, so as I said, I remember when I was small, the thoughts that were going through my head. When I grew up, I faced challenges. They say, if you be nice to, especially when I met girls, it's like, you be nice to them, they'll be nice back to you. And I was nice to them, and I was their friend, but I was never their boyfriend kind of vibe, And then I was like, but that's weird. They told me if I was, I asked girls, like, what do you want? No, they want someone who can listen to them and they can talk to them and they can be so nice. And I was like, I'm ticking all the boxes. But things weren't really quite working. And then even when I went into the work environment, they just said, work hard and you'll be successful. It's like I was working very hard. I was working 90-hour weeks. And my success, I was doing okay. I was doing better than my peers. I'd outstripped my peers very early, but I still hadn't made, there was a massive piece missing. And that's where things changed. And what I noticed is every time I faced a challenge, the standard answers which I was getting from the general people around me it was just enough to keep me happy. And that's why I say, don't listen to the people that are closest to you. You got to listen to the people that are closest to where you want to be. The people that are closer to your goals. So if don't listen to financial advice from someone who's poor. Don't listen to relationship advice from someone who's, let's say, been in a relationship for 40 years. They'll tell you all the things of what it's like being in a relationship, but they can't support you to get into a relationship. And those things are very different. So I literally just took my entire life and I turned it upside down and I shook this thing really hard. And I was like, okay, let me start another way. Let me do something until it works. And then figure out what I did that made it work and see if I can do it over and over again. And if I give it to someone else and see if that works. So I re-engineered that part and I was like, okay, so it doesn't quite work the way that they say it does. It works in a different way. And this is where people think that these things are secrets. It's not really a secret. It's just, when I use the word, it's closer to the answer than the reality. So there's a difference between the way we wish the world is and the way the world actually is. We wish the world was, was easy. Our education will grant us a job. Doesn't happen that way. Just because we got A's on our report, we're going to get a good job and we're going to get paid more. Doesn't work like that. Especially in the working world, if you got someone who's got all A's on, they got distinctions on their report, but you got someone who's actually just better. They got a better skill. They're more of a go-getter than you. Over time, they're just going to, they'll get further than you. They'll get further than you a lot faster. And those are the things which it drove me. It drove me bananas. Actually, it made me mad. And I was angry at the world for a long time because I realized that the people around you, the people that are closest to you, they just want to keep you safe. So they're going to give you all the advice which keeps you nice and safe. They keeps you in a cocoon, and they don't want you to go out there. They don't want your heart to be broken. They don't want you to get hurt in any way. They don't want you to get fired, or they don't want you to take risks. They don't want you to do weird things which might, give you a problem later. But that also keeps you very average, like very, even below average.
You mentioned now doing the difficult thing and finding out who you are and what works for you. So how do you get to that answer of who are you, and why is it so important to be able to answer that question?
Well, at the base, it's probably the most important question to ask and answer. Most people just aren't brave enough to ask the question. We get to a stage, and even it's probably just before becoming a teenager, and as we become a teenager, we already think that this is the way the world is. And we know everything about the world. And nobody knows about me better than I know about me. And That's just the way it is. And we're going to go out there, we're going to go out into the world and prove a point. When we're trying to prove a point, we're trying to meet other people's expectations, because we think that only when we're okay with them, then we'll be okay with us. We want to make it with our parents. And there's two things that happen here. If we are very interested in our parents' opinion, we're going to do whatever our parents say we need to do, so that one day our parents can say to us that they're proud of us. And then we think, oh my gosh, we've made it. These are important people in our life. There's also the flip side that happens, is sometimes people think, well, my parents didn't raise me right, or I didn't have the right upbringing, and the best way to hurt my parents is I'm going to hurt myself. I'm going to push myself off the edge of a cliff. I'm going to go and become an addict, or I'm going to live under a bridge, or I'm just going to be a bad human, if you want to call it like that. And they don't realize that they think they're trying to hurt their parents, or they're trying to fight back or rebel against the world, but they don't realize that they're hurting themselves the most. When we answer the question, and I know what we're doing is essentially we're spinning around this quite a lot. When we can answer the question of who am I, it changes everything. Because as opposed to living up to someone else's ideal, or trying to, get the validation from somebody else, the validation lives inside of us already. I don't need the fancy car to make me cool. I'm already cool, and I happen to drive a fancy car. And now and let's play this out in, let's say, the work industry, or making money. This is so critical important, because when I sit with CEOs, or we're sitting there doing a deal, and you're sitting, all the people, they got the fancy watch on, they got the suit on, and everything is posturing, everything is trying to show off. But underneath, you got a scared little boy. You got a scared child inside of them, and they're trying to just cover it all up. The difference is most people are looking at the watch, they're looking at the car, and they think, oh my gosh, these people are so fancy, or they're looking at the title on the card. And that's, when they're playing that game, they're playing a smaller game, because they're trying to impress each other. But the big people, now watch it, the people that really do well, you sit down and it's like, okay, you got a deal on your hands, I got a deal on my hands. And we meet each other as equals. And we can just relax into what's actually going on here. And the closer you get to knowing who you are, and this is the thing that changed something big for me in my life as well, when it comes to making money and making a lot of it, when you change that mindset, that I can earn whatever I want. Or how about this? I don't have to have my own personal opinion. My opinion is, what does the other person need from me? And I can drop all of my barriers. I can drop all of my issues. I drop all of my ego. And it's not about the watch that I'm wearing on my arm, and go, look at me and look how cool I am. It's just very simply going, I see you need something, you have a problem that needs to be solved. How are we going to solve this problem? And if I need to, let's say, do some work to support you to solve that problem, great. And now there's a deal that's going on, and it's like, for that solution that I will grant you, there will be some sort of money exchange, and let's do a deal. And ultimately, this is how bigger deals are made. So when we get down to the base of it, even becoming a normal, like a good worker, if you have a job, and I'll give you a quick mind shift. Some people think that we have a job. How about this? If you think that you are self-employed, you are your own company, and you go to a place of work and they happen to pay you, you don't have a job anymore. You're running your own business. And you're running your own business within another business. And it's a shift in a mindset, because let's play out the standard mindset. Some people think, as long as I go to a place of work and I sit in a chair and I keep the chair warm and I sit behind a screen and I'm there for 8 hours, at the end of it, you got to give me money. But now if you do that over and over again, and the company starts suffering and we don't actually make money, then I've either got to retrench you or I've got to fire you, and watch the attitude. Yeah, but this is unfair. I was at work for 8 hours. It's like, no, you were at work for 8 hours. How much work did you actually do? Did you do 8 hours of work? And now when we get down to changing our mindset, and this is something that I haven't learned, even when I was doing my 90-hour weeks, I work a lot harder and a lot faster now. I can pump out 8 hours of work in probably 3 to 4 hours. I can do a lot more. I'm a lot more efficient. So when people start to measure this thing of going, okay, well, you are at work for 8 hours, but how much work did you actually do? How much messing around did you do? How efficient are you? And when we can start to measure that, and if I walk into a job situation and say, I'll tell you what, I'll do those 8 hours of work in 2 hours. Now, here's the question. Are you going to keep me at work? Do you want me to stare at my machine for 6 hours? Or give me more, and don't give me more work, give me more responsibility. And the more responsibility you have, the higher your paycheck will be. And eventually you'll find yourself in positions of power. I mean, it's works same in a relationship. Don't give me more work to do. Don't make it more effort. Give me more responsibility. Give me more accountability. Let me show up more of who I am. And that's part of being in a relationship. I want my partner to demand more of me, not because I'm not doing enough, it's because they believe in me and they believe that I'm capable of a lot more. And when I believe in myself and I know that I'm capable of a lot more, then I show up better. It just makes sense.
I love the fact that there's two words that you said that I really like. It's adding value and taking responsibility. And I think those two things are incredibly important if you want a better life. And also if you want to, well, I suppose the right sequence of that wording would then be, if you know yourself, you'll have a better life. I think that's at least what I heard you said. But that obviously should not be the initial reason. And that brings me to the question of, do you think, which one is first, the egg or the chicken? Is it first you get to know yourself because you want a better life, or is it you get to know yourself because you want to get to know yourself? You mentioned you from a very young age had these questions and you knew there was a puzzle piece was missing.
Yeah.
But how does, where does people who perhaps did not have that from a young age, is it okay for them to say, listen, I want to get to know myself because I want a better life?
So this is where it gets interesting. When people say, yeah, but you're lucky, or because of my upbringing, or I don't have what you have. Let's make it very simple. Are you breathing? Are you alive? You have everything that anybody else has. You literally have everything. You are not born incomplete. Because this is part of what's the programming that we get. We are born and we are dependent on everybody else for everything else. And we grow up feeling like we are dependent. And eventually we want to become independent. We want to be our own person. And it's got nothing to do with luck. It's got nothing to do with your upbringing. It's got nothing to do with your culture. It's got nothing to do with your circumstances, your environment, or any of that. It's a very simple thing is, are you a human? And whether you have, 2 arms, hands and legs, or let's say you don't have arms and legs, because I know people that don't, you know that you're a being living inside you. There's something inside of you. It's the you inside of you. And the chicken and the egg story is, we can go through our life however we want. Most of us are not brave enough to ask the question in the beginning. And we think that as long as I keep going, and let's say I'm going to live a tough life, or I'm going to live an easy life, and as I live my life, eventually I'll discover whatever it is. You could do it like that. It's just a very long and hard way. Let me give you another example. It's like, imagine that I wanted to have a nice body. I wanted to be well built. I wanted to be ripped and shredded. And I can watch all the DVDs about going to gym. I can read all of the diet books. I can even see all the pictures of all the gyms inside, and I can see the weights. I can even lick the page if I want. But if I don't do anything, if I don't actually go to the gym, if I don't actually follow the diet plan, if I don't actually do it, I'll never experience that. I'll never get the benefit of it. So the chicken and the egg story is, this is part of the programming. This is part of what I mentioned when we were growing up. We still think that we don't have enough. We think that we need more, and then when we get more, we still think we need a lot more. And only once we have too much or more than enough it's barely enough. If we actually really think about it, we were not born with a gold watch on our arm. We weren't born with a gold chain around our neck. And when we die, we're not going to take any of that stuff with us. The one thing that is absolutely consistent the entire time is you. And it's the person that is you. So to ask the question of going, okay, so which one's first, the chicken and the egg? The answer is actually the egg. The egg came first. It's a philosophical question, but yeah,
stay tuned for the next episode. Which is first?
Yeah, and so you don't actually have to. Let me play it out. You don't have to ask the question, "Who am I?" and then get confused about it. Ask yourself, "Am I okay just being me? And what is it about me that makes me? And what do I do that shows the world who I am?" You can start there, and you can make those choices. Having the idea in your head that I can only start thinking about who I am once I have a car, once I have a house, once I have a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a wife or a husband or a child, I can only start doing that once I have. That's exactly the trap. The trap is you can only start this work or this idea that you can only ask the question once you get to a place. I mean, we all have it. I always think to myself, as soon as I'm finished this next little piece, then I can go and do something else. But I get very busy and distracted over here. But we get very busy and we get very distracted. And life keeps us distracted. What did I say? Being a consumer, consumerism wants to keep you distracted. They want to keep. Now, I know that I'm going to upset some people and upset some viewers. They want to keep your self-esteem low because they're going to sell you something which they say is going to boost your self-esteem. Girls go for boob jobs and men go for other kind of jobs and all those kinds of things because we think that this is going to boost my self-esteem. And it does. I mean, it's not a bad thing. I'm not against any of that. But we think it's that outside stuff. So we don't even have to, we just got to ask ourselves a simple question. Am I a human? And if the answer is yes, which if you're listening to this, the answer would be yes. If I'm a human, I have everything that I need to firstly ask the question, and I can discover who I actually am. And this is where it gets interesting. Most people, because of their upbringing or because of their background, whatever, they have this idea that, I don't want to look inside of me because maybe what I discover is something scary. Maybe I'm a monster. And that is so far from the truth. But that is the story that we tell ourselves in our head. And that's the story that keeps you from actually doing the work, because it's easy for us to go to gym. It's easy for us to lift weights and look bigger. It's easy for us to get a job and get a promotion or get an education. That stuff is easy. And we think that, as long as I build this barrier around me, then I don't have to, cut closer to the bone. And that's the thing that actually keeps you scared. And I'll even speak from a man's perspective. For men, this is terrifying. We don't like to admit that we're afraid. We don't like to admit that we experience fear because, we got to be the brave ones. And even when you say to someone, "Are you afraid?" the instant answer will be like, "No, I'm not afraid. I'm not scared, chick. I can, I'm going to fight everybody and I'm going to beat everybody up." And it's like, whoa, before you get excited, that's already a measure going, why do you need to prove a point? You're defending yourself. But when you actually are brave enough to put that down and go, hang on a second, this is not as scary and as terrifying as you think. And it's not about exposing your weaknesses. It's about exposing something that is so deep inside of you that is actually your core strength. It's something that you're actually coming from. It's not something you're getting to, but you still think that this is something that needs protection or it's something that's weak inside of you. When I can turn it around and show you how strong you really are, everything goes away. What's there to be afraid of? You want to lose your house? So you lose your house. Does it change who you are? No. You want to lose a car? Does it change who you are? No. Unless you think that the things outside of you are the things that make you who you are. Because then if you go back to times when, there's massive recessions and stuff like that, people lose a lot of money on the stock market. And you hear the stories where they jump out of windows or they commit suicide. I mean, these things are very serious and they're very sad. But it's because we identify with those things on the outside. We think our identity is that thing. I mean, if you listen to social media nowadays, we've got a massive identity crisis on our hands, and people identify and they think that they are either a full stop or a doorknob or a lampshade or something like that. And you can do whatever you want, and that's part of the here's the big trick. People say to people, I can't do what I want. You're doing exactly what you want. You're already doing it.
What does that mean? Sorry, flesh that out a little bit for me. I'm not sure I understand quite what that means. You're doing exactly what you want to do. Is this something? I want to connect it to something that a concept I'm familiar with, which is the value hierarchy. Is that what you mean? You technically, what's on top of your value hierarchy, you're technically doing that, even though you think that's not what's at top.
In a sense, yes, because we will do things based on our own, not only our own values, it's the things that we value. So let's say if you value relationships over money, you'll make more choices leaning into relationships over making more money. Where if you value more money, you'll make other choices and you'll chase money as opposed to chasing a good relationship. And there's the chicken and the egg thing. We think we either do the one or the other. We can do both at the same time. We can do all of these things at the same time. And when I say we make choices, just because the choice is hard doesn't mean that we don't make choice. And oftentimes people say, yeah, but that choice is hard, or I didn't want to do that. Let's say, I'll try and give as many examples as possible. When people get divorced, and you can say to them, did you want to get divorced? No. Here's a hard question. So why did you choose to get divorced? I didn't choose. Okay. So let's just play it out. When it was the anniversary, what did you do? Did you spend time together, or did you go and play golf? Or did you, when it was her birthday, did you give her something that she wanted, or something that he wanted, or did you give them a kitchen appliance? We make these little choices over and over again, and these choices get us to a particular place. We always think that the choice we made just before the thing happened is the choice. No, we make choices every day. Even a personal story, someone sticks a gun in your mouth and says, give me your cell phone. We can make a choice. We either give them the cell phone or we say no. It's still a choice. The choices are hard to make. That's not what I'm talking about, because this is where the argument starts. It's like, yeah, but I don't want to make that choice, or, that choice isn't a nice choice. That's true. It's still a choice. So yes, we'll make choices. We'll make choices to either look at this, like even the discussion we're having now. You can make a choice to look at the stuff and look at the discussion and listen to the content and, open the door into yourself. You can make that choice. Well, how about this? You can make another choice and think that this is a whole lot of rubbish. This is a whole lot of woo-woo stuff. It's all airy-fairy and fluffy, and that stuff never works. And guess what? It's never going to work for me. That's still a choice. You're making a choice, and you're going to tell your story about the choice you make. And I was exactly that person. I mean, let's play it out. I'm an engineer by trade. I'm a very logical person, and I thought that all of this stuff was fluffy and was only for broken people, and I would never do anything like this. And one of the big things that changed is when I opened the door and I realized, hang on a second, every person is engaged in personal development at some level. If you've gone to school, you've been in personal development. Why do you go to school? To get yourself better. When you go to a job, you want to get your life better. You are personally developing yourself. If you want a promotion, you are interested in personal development. If you want a bigger bank account, you are interested in personal development. The difference between personal development and personal development has it's gotten a very bad reputation. But here's the idea. It gets a bad reputation because it starts out with the idea that you are broken and you need to be fixed. I'm coming from the space of you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. There's different choices that you can make. There's nothing wrong with you. And I will show you that there's nothing wrong with you. And I'll show you that you are capable of anything you put your mind to. That's why I said sometimes I'll become an awkward person, because people walk into the room and they have this idea that they can't. And then I show them that they can. But I'm not showing them that it's possible. I'm actually showing the person themselves that they are physically capable of doing anything they want. And once you have that experience that you actually are capable, it'll remap and rewire the mind from the experience, because now it's not just an idea, it's not a concept, it's not theory anymore. This is real. And me coming from the place of going, personal development is rubbish, and now I'm the one busy, I put on the show, I actually run the workshops. And all I do is I just show people what I've learned over the last, let's call it 50 years. That's all that I'm doing. I'm just showing people, it's like, I tried this, that didn't work. I tried these things and these work all the time. And the people that try the stuff, it also works. So just do that stuff and I promise you this will work. And when we are doing the things that work, why wouldn't you want to do more of the things that work and less of the things that don't? And it comes down to a simple thing: is we are afraid to look inside, because we are afraid to we don't want to be wrong. We think we're right. We think we're always right. And me too. I mean, I'm part of this whole bag. So when I say these things, I'm not separate. I'm not separate from anybody else. I've lived this life, and not only have I lived this life, I have all of the bad habits, the terrible beliefs. I have everything inside of me. I mean, sometimes I say to people, I'm the person your parents warn you about. Because and that's part of the thing. It's learning from the experience. And if you can learn from an experience, if you can have someone go out and have a bad experience on your behalf, and they bring back the lesson, then you don't have to go through the experience. You can learn the lesson, and you can learn it quickly. So you make a lot more progress. So when it ties into your values and your choices, when you actually, because here's an interesting question. If you can't explain to me where did you get your values from, or what your values are, well, how about this? If you can't tell me why you believe the things you believe, it's probably not your belief. That was given to you. You heard it somewhere. It sat in your mind for a while. It made you comfortable, and then you just think this is the way it is. And here's a very, it's something difficult to consume. If you can't test it, then how can you trust it? So I enjoy people, if I could say, test me or test the idea. Test it. Don't listen to a word I say. Don't trust me. Don't believe that I'm, spewing all this wisdom and I know better than everybody else. I don't. But here's my challenge. I'm willing to test my idea, my system, or my thinking, or a method. I can put it to the test, and I put it to the test regularly. Are you brave enough to test yours? And most of the time, if you want to test two different methods, if the method that works for you and it's robust and it holds weight, then use it. And if it does, then guess what? You'll be making a lot of progress in your life. But if you're somewhere stuck, you've gone around the circle over and over again, and you're feeling like you're stuck somewhere, well, that shows you that whatever you're running your thoughts on, or whatever that is based around, that's the thing that's keeping you stuck. It's like having an elephant that's, it's got a peg in the ground, it's got a chain to its leg, but it won't pull against the peg because when it was young, they put the peg, this is a real thing, they actually, they dig a deep hole, they pour concrete into it, and when the elephant is small, the elephant learns very, very well, while it's very young, that it can't pull the peg out the ground. So it starts to believe that peg is immovable. But now when it's an adult elephant, all they do is they put a yellow pig or a red pig, they paint it to make sure it's a very bright color, and they just put the chain around it, they just put a rope around it. The elephant believes it can't pull a peg out the ground, and guess what? It doesn't do anything. Meanwhile, it's an elephant. It can just walk away. It'll pull the pig out of the ground, no problem. But because of that initial thought, which was planted in its mind so long ago, it's not real. And that's part of it. And we'll get back to a choice. We make a choice. We choose to believe the things that we believe. I don't know how am I doing. I think
you're doing well.
We kind of jumped into the deep end pretty quickly. So, yeah.
Well, that was my aim, at least. I'm not so sure about Anlu, but it was my aim. So, few things. One, Anlu, choice. We have had this conversation about choice so many times, and she still doesn't believe me, but anyway. So,
I guarantee later today you will make a choice. You will choose between what you're going to have for lunch. You're going to choose whether you're going to have dinner. You're going to choose to go to bed at a particular time. You'll wake up in the morning. You'll choose to either get out of bed or you'll choose to stay in bed. There's choices everywhere.
So we've had a little bit of a different angle to the conversation, and I'm sure it would be an interesting one to have with you. But I won't. Go anyway.
Ahead.
Not the topic of this conversation.
Don't awake the demon.
Don't hold back. As I said, here's the thing, is like for me personally, and I know that sometimes also it's like depending on the audience that listens to this, some people will get offended, or some people will go, oh yeah, sure, I get this. And some people won't like it, and some people will disagree. So you have all these different perspectives and different opinions. And that's the point. The point is, can we explore together? Can we have a conversation? I'm not here to convince you of anything. Let's just have a conversation and let's see what plays out. And that's how we discover, we get closer to reality and we get further away from fantasy. And I'll give you an example. When I was young, the fantasy was go to school, get a good education, you will get a good job, you will be happy. It's part of the fantasy. I went to school, got my education, I got an exceptional job, and by the age of 28, I'd already achieved everything that was on the tick list, and I was like, okay, now what? I wasn't unhappy, but I was just plugged into a machine, and I got to live the rest of my life, and I just got to. Every day is the same. I wake up, go to sleep. I wake up, go to sleep. Yeah, it's a nice wish. It's a nice fantasy, and especially this, they don't prepare you for. This is what it's going to be like when you have a breakup, or one day if they're going to break into your house and they're going to steal stuff from you, or they're going to do terrible things to you, whatever it is. Here's the fantasy. The fantasy is that stuff will never happen to you. Here's my question. Are you telling me that never happens in the world? And I'd rather be prepared and never need it. One of the statements I say to someone, it's not mine, it's a statement that's made out there. I would rather be a warrior, someone who's trained to fight and work in the garden. So I'd rather be a warrior in the garden than be a gardener in a war. Because if I'm a gardener in a war, I'm not prepared for anything, and people are dying around me, and literally it's a life and death situation. Where if I'm a warrior and I'm prepared for a life and death situation, it doesn't mean that I need to go out and kill people, and it doesn't mean that I want people to attack me. It just means I'm prepared. That's the major difference. I'm just prepared, and the more I'm prepared for something, the less it's going to hurt me. We're going to have death in our lives. If I'm prepared for people dying around me, I'm going to be better prepared. It'll still affect me, but it won't crush me. And this is what happens if you want to talk about even leaders. When there's chaos going around, when there's a massive crisis, people look around for the calmest person in the room. And when you're the calmest person because you've got the stuff handled, yes, stuff's going on, and of course it's going to affect you, but you're still calm and you can make rational decisions, and you can keep your wits about you. And that's when people, it's not only that you put yourself as a leader, people around you will make you their leader because they know that you've got your shit handled.
But I want you to, in a sense, explain as best you can how you support people to get there, to get to that point where they don't necessarily not know who they are. So I've done your workshops. I've done other stuff as well, as you know, and we have talked about it before. But there is something very special for me to the stuff that you do, and it's not necessarily. I'm not making you a god, or please not.
I'm not a guru.
No. The thing that makes it special for me is that it is a very individual process, even though you do it with other people. And the fact that it's so individual, and it literally feels like you are the only person there, even though you are there and other people are in the same room as you are, it literally feels just like you're just dealing with yourself. That's why it's so special to me. So I want you to explain a little bit what you do, how you do it, to an extent that doesn't give it away.
Well, one of my experiences is I can literally tell you exactly what we do, and it still won't make any difference. I hear things, I forget. I read things, I forget. I see things, I remember. It's when I do things that I know. That's the big thing. So it comes down to the doing. So I'll give you a bit of my backstory when I discovered personal development, and I prefer moving from personal development to what I call self-mastery. Personal development says what's wrong with you, let's fix you. For me, self-mastery is going, there's nothing wrong with you, let's build what's possible. I'm more interested in your future than you are. So for me, it's a case of what does your future look like, and what do we need to do here to build that future that you want? And one of the big things for me is I'm not trying to turn you into something according to me. I want to know what is it for you, and what do you want your life to look like, and now how do we get there? Because this isn't about me, this is about you. It's not about turning you into something, again, you got to match my picture or my idea. I want to go way beyond do you think is possible? So I spent, personally, when I started this journey, I think I'm probably about 1.2 million, at least 1 million. I spent more than 1 million rand on my own personal development, flying overseas, doing workshops all over the show. So I've had the experience of being in the room and being in the chair. And in many ways, I'd like to think and say to people, you don't need, I mean, people say, like, who needs this work? I'd like the answer to be nobody. Nobody ever needs to do any personal development, or how about this? I prefer self-mastery. Nobody needs to do any of this work. And again, that's the fantasy. You don't need it. The thing is, it'll make a massive difference to your life. And it will not only change your life, it'll change the country we live in. It'll change the world. Because you don't have people running around thinking the only time that I can be okay is if I take something from you. When we realize that we are actually okay, that we are living in an abundant world and we can do whatever we want, and we do, then it can start to shift a few things. So, and I'm trying to get to the question what you're asking. How do I do what I do? It's exactly that. As opposed to me saying, you now need to change who you are and you need to fit your life into this thing, I try and work it the other way around. And it's very simple. Ask yourself a simple question. Is what I'm doing working? Or is what I'm doing going to get me to where I want to be? And if the answer is no, then you do something different. And then you do something different and you ask yourself the same question. Is what I'm doing now going to get me to where I want to be? And let's say I want a happy relationship, or I want to be a good lover, or I want to be a good mom or a good dad, or I want to be rich, or I want to live in a safe house, or whatever it is. Doesn't matter what it is. You put your goal out there and go, is what I'm doing now going to get me there? If the answer is no, do something else. So the way that I do it is I've tried to make, and it's probably just from my engineering background, I try and make it extremely simple. We do two simple things. I say, this is how the general population, or this is how most people run their lives, or this is how people operate. Here's another idea and a different way to operate. And then based on these two different ways, you can measure which one you want to use. This one will get you to a particular place. In other words, when people operate at, let's call it a basic level, the one place will either take you to hell, a very uncomfortable, very unhappy life where we blame the world and say the world is unfair, and my life is, we speak about how big our butt is, I'd be rich, but I got a girlfriend, or I would be rich, but, I had children, or I would be rich, but you don't know what it was like for me growing up. And then I'll tell you all about my butt. So we got a big butt. Or you could look at another way and go, okay, whatever is working, or what is the mechanism, or what's the system that I can use to get me to where I want to be? And it might not happen tomorrow, but if I keep going, and I split it very simply. So I try and keep it very simple, going, here's, and hear the words. I'm avoiding the words good, bad, right, wrong. Take all the judgments away. Because that's all when people say, no, what you're doing is bad and what you're doing is wrong, that's judgment. But if you can look at it and go, are you happy with your results? And some people say, yeah, but that's not moral. It's like, well, let's expose this. Morality is, do you want a person around you that doesn't do stuff because in their mind they think that's bad and wrong? Or do you want a person around you going, that's not a good thing to do? Because what I'm about to do is going to affect my family. It's going to hurt my boyfriend. It's going to hurt my wife. It's going to hurt the people around me. So I'm not going to do it because it's going to destroy something that's very precious to me. I don't need to have the judgment in my head of right and wrong. But if I can evaluate my results, so the method that I use, the method is very simple. We just evaluate going, is what you're doing getting you to where you want to be? And where do you want to be? And how do you get there? So this is a standard way, and the one way will keep you stuck. It keeps you going around in a circle, chasing your own tail over and over again, making excuses and all of these things. And all of your excuses are valid, and it's not your fault. But here's the thing. Even if your excuses are valid, it's still your problem. You've still got the problem. So you've got an excuse. Great. You still got a problem. It might not be your fault. Okay. It's still your problem. How do we solve the problem? So now when we're going, okay, but now I need something new. I need an alternative, because if I have my belief system in my head, or my idea of how life works in my head, the way I should go to work, or the job I should have, or whatever it is, if I keep that in my head, that's going to keep me stuck. The idea is going, okay, if I can let that go, so this is still my problem, and I can start chasing the solution instead of because my problem is my excuse. There's my excuse. All your excuses are valid, but you still got the problem. And then coming back to the simple thing is you can't just tell someone that they are capable of doing what they want, or you can't tell them that they are capable of succeeding, because they'll just nod and say, yes, I am. But they're going to walk out the room all excited about nothing. So I'm very excited, but and people say I'm all motivated about what? I don't know. So you got a very excited idiot about that's all you got, an excited idiot. You need a practical method to use. And all that I give you is mental models or practical ways to evaluate what you're doing and how to solve a big problem. And most of the time, solving a big problem is a little bit just outside of the box. It's a little bit outside of your comfort zone. In other words, you'll be a little uncomfortable for a while. But watch here, the more uncomfortable you are, what will happen is your comfort zone will expand. So you start becoming very comfortable being uncomfortable. And it's the people that can be comfortable being uncomfortable are the ones that make the progress the quickest. So and that's part of the thing. In the beginning, we think it's uncomfortable, but when we realize that I'm actually capable of doing this, I don't need a massive education. I don't need an MD. I don't need a PhD to do this stuff. I don't need any of this stuff. Like, that was part of the original discussion, that if you're a human, you already have all the things that you need to succeed. The thing is, I need to instill inside of you going that you just need to believe that you are capable. You need to move from I can't to I can. You add the word yet. I'm not successful yet, as opposed to I'm not successful because or but this or but that. And so the method is very simple. We just evaluate going, okay, is what you're doing going to get you there? If the answer is yes, keep doing it. I'm not going to take it away. Keep doing it. If the answer is no, okay, try this way. Try this way and go, okay, are your results working for you? And how do you get better results? What is it that you need to change? What do you need to do differently? And if you do it differently, try something new, which is a risk, which is where people feel fear. Let's do something different. Did it work? If it worked, keep doing more of it, and you do it until it doesn't work anymore. And then, okay, now it didn't work. Okay, cool. Then let's try something new. Let's try something new. But people are so afraid of judgment and failure. I tried that one thing and I failed. And then they don't want to try anything new. I mean, that's part of our school upbringing. When I used to write exams, I used to get a lot more crosses than I did a lot of ticks. So we worried about people saying how bad and wrong we are, and you don't know the answer, or you're stupid, and you're a failure, and all of that noise, as opposed to saying, look, I tried something and it didn't work. Let me try again. Let me try again. And as long as there's a trap in trying, because people say to you, yeah, but I'm trying. No, you've already set yourself up for failure because you're trying. Are you more after getting stuck in the loop of trying and getting nowhere and just saying to everybody, I've put in so much effort and here's my story, where I've attempted that and I'm going to go all in. Some people say to me, I tried a diet. Okay, how long did you try it for? No, I tried it for 2 or 3 days and it just didn't work. It's like, how many kilograms you want to lose? You want to lose 10 kilograms. You tried it for 2 days. Yeah, I tried that. It didn't work. Did you try it for 90 days in a row without breaking the diet at all, without cheating on the diet, did you at least try it for that long? Oh, no, but that's hard. Yeah, but then you're talking rubbish to yourself. You didn't actually put the effort in. You didn't do it. And then and this is part of my experience, is you try something, and when I use the word try, when you actually follow through on something, and that's a big thing, you follow through on it, you actually see the result on the other side, because that's where people say to people, but you're lucky. You're lucky you can do this. You've got privilege, or you grew up in the right household, or you were lucky to be in. Luck does have a factor in some places. Bill Gates was lucky to be in university when computers were starting, so he was lucky. Mark Zuckerberg, he was lucky because social media just started and he started Facebook. So you could say that's lucky. But that's about as far as luck got them. If they weren't the kind of people that they were, they would never be billionaires. So luck is only a very, very small part of it. And let's play this one. Maybe you're lucky to hear this podcast right now. Maybe that's luck. Maybe you're lucky to hear this message because most people won't hear it. And here's the big thing. The people that actually need this the most are probably the ones that won't listen to this podcast. So maybe you're lucky that you're actually listening.
I find it incredibly, I want to say sad, but not necessarily sad, disappointing that not everyone can be lucky in that way. Because I happen to agree with you. If more people on this planet actually make the effort to get to know who they are, we'll live in essentially a utopia, because life will just work for everyone then. Well, essentially, I'm basing this off of my experience, and life is working for me. So,
Well, let's think about it for a second. And I know that you've probably heard this over and over again. It still needs to be highlighted. When I started this journey, I mean, I was working for a cell phone company. So I was in the whole cell phone world, and internet was brand new. In fact, it hadn't actually come out. I'd already been working there for a while, so internet was new. So all of the things that I had to go through was literally manual. If you wanted to know information, you go to the library. You know, you'd have to open an encyclopedia. You'd have to read. And with my dyslexia, reading for me was a challenge. You know, so it was already a problem. Now, let's take a very close look. The information which I desperately needed when I was young is available, and it costs you nothing. It's a couple of pennies on, you know, for the data that you use. You can access any information that you want right now with YouTube. You just ask YouTube how to, and you'll get something. You might not get you might not get the meat of it, but you'll at least get something. So people sitting there going, "Yeah, but they're lucky or whatever." You got no idea the luck that we are sitting on right now as people, as humans, and all the rest of it. The potential that we have. The thing is, we just listen to things and we think, as long as I got the information in my head, then I'll be fine. It's like, no, you got the information. You can talk a big game, but you can't do it. You know, it's the difference between talking to someone about juggling or surfing or swimming or riding a bike or driving a Formula One car. People can talk about it, but how many people actually do it? That's the big difference. It's the ones that do it. You got to take that information and you got to turn it into action. And for me personally, I mean, action was, it's a lot. I love being a thinker. I want to solve all the problems of the world in my own head, and I think it's all done. And for me, it's a grind. It's tough. It really is tough, and it's uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable for me actually doing stuff. You know, so even doing this whole self-mastery thing, I think I run workshops because it gives me the opportunity to actually keep putting it into action over and over again, so that it sinks into my mind. And I get to test it on a regular basis, and not just against one person. I get to test it against thousands of people, and over the last 25 years. And when I find that there's a hole in there somewhere, you know, something doesn't quite work, then I go to work fixing that hole. So over time, we don't have any holes in the bucket. This thing is, you know, it's pretty solid. It can really hold water. And that's where, you know, most people don't want to test their way of thinking, because there's a lot of holes in it. And when you show the person the hole, they're going to get excited and upset about it. But for me, the learning was, when I discover a hole in my thinking, I think it's the best experience ever, because it's like, oh my gosh, I've discovered a place where I'm leaking out. And if I fix that, and as opposed to sitting there trying to bail the water out of the boat that's sinking, I just find the hole and plug the hole. Then I get no more water, and then I can either let the water evaporate, or like and then when I bucket the water out, no water comes back into the boat and we don't sink. It's just simple.
So
Yeah.
if I can jump in here for 1 second,
I want you to, yes, please.
how important do you think knowing where you want to go is in the process of is to enable you to actually get to know who you are?
Very simply, it's actually not important at all.
Okay.
So now I'm going to give you a parallel. There's two ways to look at it. On one side, it's very important because it gives you a direction. But here's one of the things that we were told, and when I was approaching standard 8, or nowadays it's grades, what's it, grade 10, and you got to choose your subjects and all the rest of it. They said you got to choose your subjects, and I thought to myself, geez, I don't even know where I want to go in my life. I don't know what I want to do. Now you want to ask me a question, and I need to make a choice which is going to affect my entire life. It was very stressful for me. So it's better to know where you want to go, or start out with an idea where you want to go. Yes, it is better. It's not necessary. The main thing is, if you just know that you're on the journey and you're on the path, in other words, there's a road in front of you and the road is long. and as long as you're willing to walk the road, you don't necessarily need to know where you want to go. Because here's where it gets tricky. When you're young, the place that you think you want to go to, when you arrive there, sometimes turns out that you don't want to be there at all. As I said, I grew up thinking that, I wanted to do something. And then I thought, well, a friend of mine was a mechanic. He was making money. And when my teachers told me that, Andrew, you'll never make it out there, which is funny. I thought, well, my friend's a mechanic. I'll just go and be a mechanic and I'll also make lots of money. I didn't. I actually don't like working on cars. I love building them in the sense that I can put it in a machine. I can engineer the parts. Love that part. And I chose to be an engineer, and I thought engineering is great. And again, I just chose it because it was like, this is going to make lots of money. Engineers make money. My work environment was an absolute disaster. And these are the thoughts that I had in my head. I thought I'd be an engineer for the rest of my life. I left mechanical engineering. I went into telecommunications engineering. So I've actually got 2 engineerings behind me. And then eventually, and I thought to myself, I'd live and, I'd die working for the cell phone companies and making lots of money like that. And one day I decided, no, stuff this. What was feeding my bank account wasn't feeding my soul. And I've left that. I'm no longer in those environments anymore. And even to the point of now, I run workshops and I work with people. There's also going to come a time where I'm not going to do that either. So in other words, the destination can change. So if we get too married to a particular idea of the way, like, this is where I have to be like this, even from a female's point of view, going, I have to be a mom, or I have to be successful, or I have to be this. Things can change. Well, how about this? People think that I don't want children, and then one day they decide I really want a kid. So the answer is, do we need to know where we're going? No, we don't need to. It's much better, 100%. But also what happens sometimes when we think to ourselves, this is where I want to be, we get so stubborn and so stuck in that we miss the opportunity. And that's one of the big things. The moment that we fixate on one thing, we lose all the other opportunities. But people always ask me, like, what's the one thing that will change everything? Is thinking that there's one thing. Because there's a lot of things. And can I nail it down to one thing? Sure, I can. But I mean, that's part of the trick, is because we think it's always this, it's just the one thing that's going to change everything. There's many things. And because we are humans, we are a lot more complicated than we think, when we are a lot more simple than we imagine we are. We're a lot more attached to our biology, and our biology drives us to a massive degree. But the one thing which we have as a human being is, when we come back to choice, I can pack a bag, with a big piece of material into it, and I can jump into a plane and I can fly very high, and my biology will say, don't jump out of the plane because you'll die. But if my mind is in charge, if I use my mind, if I use my thinking, my mind can say to my body, I've got a parachute, let's jump out. And here's the thing, jumping out of a plane with a parachute on your back is very brave, it's very courageous. Jumping out of a plane without a parachute is just stupidity. So don't do stupid stuff, don't make stupid decisions, do things by thinking about them. And once you engage in the way of your thinking, and you are in charge of everybody thinks that they're in charge of their thoughts, and I can show you within 5 minutes that you're not, because we tend to do weird things. How many times do people say, like, they wake up the next morning with a hangover, I'm never going to drink again until next weekend, what are they doing? They're getting lacquer with all their China. So it's we do these weird things because we are driven by our habits. So we need to take charge of our habits, and breaking a habit it's very difficult. Breaking a habit,
very difficult thing.
Yeah. Well, what you got to do is you just drown out. You got to crowd out your old habit with a better one. So if you want to go on a diet,
do it 21 times for it to stick.
At least. It's not about me eating healthier or changing my diet. I just start eating healthier more often, and eventually I'm eating a lot less rubbish.
No, yeah.
You've been very quiet back there. How's this been for you? Or like, ask me questions or something. Otherwise, I can just keep going. As you can tell,
So we have. Elnieke, I'll give you over to you in a moment. I want to ask. So we have this. We started this tradition of our previous guest leaving a question for the next guest. And our previous guest had to answer what in her job she was a vet. And we asked her for examples in her job that really was absurd But the question that she left was there a time in your journey to getting to discover yourself where you realized something remarkable about yourself that you can leave with our guests as well? And the follow-up to that is, every time you help someone else discover something about themselves, do you still discover things about yourself?
Well, I'll start there. I'll say it over and again. I don't need to run workshops. I don't need to. As I said, I did all right for myself. But there's nothing more rewarding. Oh, I even get emotional now. People tell me sad stories. A sad story is a sad story. People die, pets die, things happen. Sad stories don't really impact me that much. But when I see someone wake up, when I see someone realize, who they are, and they just let their inner self shine, I can't tell you that brings me that's emotion like I can't tell you. That's joy. So that's one of the things that really, and you can't buy that. You can't put a price on that. It's priceless. So I think that's one of the things where, coming from my background, and you say the remarkable thing that I realized about myself, my teachers telling me that I know they're doing it to drive me. You'll never make it. They're trying to push me, trying to do better. And then, if I could say I retired at 28 and I look at all my other teachers, it's like, so when are you going to retire? Discovering that I am capable and I can do, and there's actually nothing wrong with me. I'm a particular kind of person. Yes, I can be quite, as I said, I can be awkward, and I've explored this topic so many times in so many different ways, and I have so many different touch points. So I've looked at this thing from so many different levels and from so many different angles, and so it gives me a much broader perspective. But discovering that I don't actually have a learning disability, that there's nothing wrong with me, and I don't have to, someone else's opinion about me doesn't tell me who I am. Those are the big things. That was very groundbreaking for me, and realizing that life isn't what they say it is. And I'm talking about the general thing. We got to wake up in the morning, and if you don't make billions, then you're not worthy of anything. No, if I've watched people that they have a capacity to just be with someone else and make their day a little better. I mean, that's a talent, that's a skill, that's beautiful. Even being a vet. I mean, a vet is a tough job. I mean, you have to put animals down, and you deal with things which are really heartbreaking. That is tough. And people don't advertise all over the world going, the SPCA dealing with all of these animals which have been maltreated and all the rest of it. So when we can start looking at the beauty of being a human and our capability of being a human, just even a stay-at-home mom, to me, is one of the most successful people in the world, because they're doing something which most don't, and it's a very precious job. So we're trying to evaluate people by either your bank account or your job title. No.
It's funny you mentioning stay-at-home mom. Sorry, just have to say this quickly.
Yeah.
I feel in today's, and I actually mentioned this to Anlu like 2 days ago or something. Like, it feels that in today's day and age, being a stay-at-home mom is such a belittling position, and it's really not. It's really, really, really not. It's actually, in my opinion, and I'm still not sure if I will ever be a mom, but whatever, I don't need to make that decision right now. It's a very honorable place to be in, because you're going back to the nature of being a woman, and that to me is amazing. I will never look down on anyone that says they're a stay-at-home mom, because you don't see what they are doing. So you can't judge, because you're not a stay-at-home mom. Anyway.
It's even teachers. I mean, teachers have got such a massive responsibility, but teachers are taught and programmed that to be a good teacher, you got to put information into children. No, and that's part of the failing. So all of my good teachers that I remember from my schooling and all my education are the ones that actually looked at me as a person, and they became role models to me, and they have a massive impact on people. But a teacher that just rolls around thinking that you're just an extra student or whatever it is, or you are who you are because of your marks, and it has a massive impact. And this is one of the things, is we don't grant that amount of responsibility to them. We wipe them aside, and it's like, oh, you're just a teacher, or you're just a mom, or you're just a whatever. No. People that are in contact with people are important, and we need to know that they are important, and we need to get the idea. Or how about this? Let's turn it the other way around. When the person in that position realizes that they are significant, they are important, they are worthwhile, they are loved, and all of those things, when they realize that they don't need to get that from the external world, and they don't just tell people to love themselves, they demonstrate what it looks like to respect themselves. And that's where things like self-respect, self-esteem, self-confidence, when they can demonstrate that and show the person what it looks like. Because this is the thing, primates, humans, we learn best by being shown. If we can show someone, don't just say they're capable, show that they're capable. That makes a massive, that's what makes the difference. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question.
It definitely does. And I think it's a good place to end this conversation. Unfortunately, if we could have, I'm sure me and Anlu would have sat here the whole day and just asked questions about. Anyway.
Well, here's the thing.
So
Before you try and wrap up, I'm going to ask Anlu a question. Is how has this been for you so far?
Very interesting. I definitely, something that stood out to me is you constantly refer back to the value that it adds to a person's life. I've, throughout my own journey of trying to discover who I am and where I see myself to be, not only in the longer term, but also what it means to me to be happy and to discover who I am. And I think throughout the journey that I've been on, it's added remarkable value to my life. It's put me in a position where it takes, I'm a little bit sick, so my voice is on the rough side today. It adds value to my life in the sense that when you engage with other people, you know who you are, and you can enter the conversation with an openness to also hear who they are. And it has allowed me to genuinely reflect on who I am, reflect on my relationships with people around me, particularly my parents. It has, the moment I was able to reflect a little bit more on who I am, it enabled me to have a much better relationship with my parents, and so for many other people in my life as well. And I think it's given me a sense of purpose also. This podcast has added a lot of value to both Elnieke and I's lives. At least I'll speak for myself, but I'm sure she'll agree, in the sense that it has allowed us to engage with ourselves as well. Often being able to speak about a topic out loud enables you to reflect a little bit better than perhaps doing so in silence. And I'm assuming that that's also something that stands out in many of these workshops that you do, is that you're able to also put a voice to many of those internal issues. And I think, so it's been very interesting. It's given a little bit more perspective also on Elnieke. I think specifically you mentioned our conversation about choices, and it was a conversation about free will. And I think it's given a little bit of background and context also to the perspective that Elnieke brings to our relationship and that she also holds. So I've definitely enjoyed. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. And thanks for having me. Yeah.
It's a pleasure. Andrew, please tell us where people can find out more about what you do, where you are. Just if it's just an email address, you can just give the email address. If it's a website, if it's wherever, if you know.
Well, the best place to either get a hold of me and I'm easy to find. There's podcasts of me. I've got a few podcasts up. I need to put more in there, but if you want, you can search either Breakthrough Radio It'll find the podcast, or if you want, you can find the Breakthrough Toolbox, which is also something you can find on a podcast platform. Or otherwise, the best thing is go and take a look at Be Limitless. So www.belimitless.co.za. And you'll find everything there. Any emails is you can send it to limitless@belimitless. And it's limitless as in L-I-M, yeah, let me start again.
We'll link it. We'll link it.
L-I-M-I-T-L-E-S-S. It's limitless. And then it's be limitless as in B-E, not just the letter B. You know, that's be happy, be yourself, be awesome, be amazing. Yeah, like that, be limitless. There you go. So yeah, be amazing, be awesome, be powerful, be who you are, be limitless. And you'll find us there. So you can send an email, can be limitless@belimitless. That will get a hold of the admin. And yeah, you can find us there. The Be Limitless is a umbrella over other things that I do. If you're looking for workshops, you can just find Harlequin JHB. So Harlequin is the workshops that's where you start. So it's harlequinjhb.co.za.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
No,
Thank you.
I'm not going to hand up my cell phone because yeah.
No, don't do that. As jy like wat jy hoor, subscribe en maak Ruh-Moer.
Bye.